Hi, I'm Terrell Turner, the host of the Business Talk Library, and today I have a special guest on because this guest has a something you don't really see a lot of, or you don't see enough of. So Kevin Dehner is not only is he in the classroom helping teach and educate, but he is also an active practitioner in the field. And when you are able to bridge the gap between the real world and the classroom, you have a dynamic, I would say you have a dynamic combination. So welcome to the show, Kevin.
Thank you, Terrell. Appreciate it. It's great to
Absolutely.
be here.
Absolutely. Now, what I think is very interesting is in the classroom, you're teaching ethics. And we were talking a little bit before, kicking the show off about that. And I think like you and I have probably experienced when we went through school, the ethics was around like the major, legal, whether it's legal or not, like the Enrons, the WorldComs. But when you get into the real world, you realize that there are a whole lot more ethical decisions that have to be made. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about, or continue the conversation about kind of the way you think about ethics and how you approach it and introducing students to not just think about it, what's legal, what's not legal, but really go deeper to say, okay, all right, really developing core values. So how have you kind of approached that with your classes and with your students?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things about this class is I was approached. So I actually co-instructed it. I actually co-developed it with an instructional design person. So someone who wasn't necessarily their everyday job is not also to be a professor. And we were really kind of given a blank slate, which was actually really cool. So we, and I think in both of our experiences, I think as we kind of went through our professional careers, we both realized that ethics plays a much bigger role in kind of your everyday life than you really realize, because you know you really have to have your own guardrails set, because nobody will set them for you. So in being asked to teach the class, that was really kind of a concept that I wanted the students to be able to understand, that no one is going to set your own guardrails. When you get out into business and into a company, people are going to do things that are in the gray, right? Because there's a lot more ethical grayness than what's legal versus what's not legal. And you really have to set your own guardrails. So we approached the class from this concept of how do we get them to start. How we define success for the student coming out of the class was that, not that they fully understood who they were as a person, but they started the process of understanding kind of what they were about, what were their core values, and not from the standpoint of, I want to be a CEO, or in the context of a career goal. But we tried to start it from a very personal standpoint, because your person and your work person, they're not really two different people. They really shouldn't be, right? You're going to be successful if you're able to be the same person both in your personal life and your work life. And and so that's actually a concept that we talk about. So we wanted to start it with the end goal being that they walk out with at least a start of a map from a core value standpoint of who they were. So in order to do that, kind of how we thought about it was we need to talk about theory at some level. So we kind of constructed the class from thinking about it from, if we start at 50,000 feet, we want to kind of start to drill down, every class throughout the semester, to get closer and closer to kind of who you are as a person. So we intentionally tried to structure the classes where we're constantly kind of going another layer deeper into, okay, who they are as a person. So we started with, ethical theory. So we talked about utilitarianism, deontology. I can never say that word. So folks like Immanuel Kant, Jeremy Bentham, John Rawls, who's a more recent kind of philosopher around social justice, Aristotle and virtue theory. So we really kind of got, not really talking about business necessarily, but really just talking about ethical theory and morality, and kind of putting various situations in front of them and really challenging them to say, okay, what do you think about this? How would you approach it? There's different theories on how to approach it, but how would you do that? So we would throw out questions to them like about Batman, right? Just to kind of start getting them thinking like, is Batman really a superhero, right? How would you analyze Batman from an ethical perspective? So that was kind of the intent of the
Gotcha.
semester and what we wanted to try and accomplish.
Gotcha. Now, when you think about, accounting, where a lot of some of the other, let's say, accounting field that we deal with, especially when it comes down to some areas of taxes, it has been very rule based. So, do you find that that people tend to have a challenge going from the rule based to really navigating the gray areas?
Well, and certainly from a tax perspective, I mean, I think an outside observer wouldn't probably appreciate this, but tax is nothing but gray. I mean, it's all gray because there is a rule, but there's never one perfect rule, right? There's always ways to interpret words in a different way or what it means, and I think that's where even like with the Paycheck Protection Program, right? Words matter. So when you use employee in one context or employee in another context, it matters in how someone should apply or think that they should apply um, that law. So from a tax perspective, we're constantly working in the gray, and I think ethics, e- even just on a in a conversation with a client, comes up all the time because they're trying to optimize their tax. So they're going to ask questions like and try and draw that line. Okay, where is within the realm of applying my facts in the best situation versus now I'm just applying my facts uh, to avoid tax, right? Where is that line? And it's not as black or white as people would like to believe it is. So
Mhm.
you're constantly applying some sort of ethical framework as a practitioner of, okay, I'm comfortable because I may be signing their return. I'm comfortable here. I'm not comfortable there. Right.
Gotcha.
And that may be different for different people. And as accountants, obviously, we have ethical standards associated with that. And there are rules in place to try and guardrail that. But what I've found as I've kind of, even in the process of researching the class, is that really ethics lead the laws, right? So as people's ethics, as a society, as individuals, as we change over time generationally, then that ultimately manifests itself in laws. But the laws are always behind where our ethics are, right? And I think we even see that today, just societally, right? If you think how quickly laws, the gay marriage laws, how quickly that changed, right? That was a change that only changed because as a society, people change their views of how they looked at that. Then the law comes, right? So ethics is always leading the law.
Mhm. Gotcha. Now, speaking of the tax side, can you
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about your business outside of the adjunct professor?
Yeah. So I'm a tax shareholder at a regional firm here in Ohio. We kind of cover Ohio, Michigan, and in Kentucky. So Clark Schaefer Hackett. We're about 500 people, about 75 million in revenue. So we're kind of somewhere, I don't know, in the top 100. That's probably somewhere in the high 50s, 60s, something like that. I've actually been here about a year. Before that, I was at two other firms, a big four for most of my career, and then a national firm for about a year and a half. So, I'm primarily a tax person now, although my career, I actually was an auditor for about 8 years when I was at the big four, and then switched into tax while I was still there, done mergers and acquisitions. So I've had kind of a different public accounting experience in that kind of moved service lines over the years. And so, which I found to be a helpful thing. I think it broadens your perspective. Um, So, we kind of do, tax returns, tax consulting, business consulting, all of the professional services firms now are getting into technology and advisory type services. So we do all of those things as well.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, one of the things I'll say, as a CPA myself, one of the things that I run into when talking to potential clients or just talking to just business owners and entrepreneurs, period, is what I try to get them to understand that although, a tax accountant, you may associate them with the tax return. My personal opinion is, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is you should probably have a conversation with them throughout the year and not wait until the end of the year until you need to get your tax return. Because I'm like, there's a lot more value that your tax accountant can provide if you're talking to them early enough. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think if you look at it from the perspective of just about every transaction in your business ends with some sort of tax being on it, right? So from your supply chain, through to your income statement. And so we can only be effective tax advisors if we know what's going on with your business. So, our approach is that our first question is not how much tax did you pay last year or how much income do you have, but it's what's your strategy, what's going on in your business. Because my recommendations around the most efficient tax structure or tax answer is going to be driven by what is your strategy, like what are you trying to achieve. For an owner who owns his business, if he's trying to get to generation 2 or generation 3, his strategy is going to be very different than someone who's trying to get to an exit, whether that's a PE exit or, sell it to another company. So all of those things drive very different approaches. And so we can't really be effective if, to your point, we're only talking to somebody. At that point, we're just a commodity, right? And what I would tell a client is that if you want someone to just do your tax return, that's fine, but that's not really how we operate. Because at that point, then it just becomes a commodity, and it's not really about us understanding your business and trying to be proactive and help you achieve your strategy goals and objectives.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, where can people find, the firm you're working with? Where can they find you guys online? And I guess you guys have a presence on social media where they can follow you guys.
Yeah, so our website is cshco.com. So that has kind of all the different services that we provide. Obviously, we post a ton of stuff on LinkedIn. I don't know that we're on Twitter. I would imagine that we're not, but all your standard business social media stuff, LinkedIn, and then our website has kind of all the different services that we provide across all of both the traditional accounting firm stuff and as well as the non-traditional accounting firm stuff.
Gotcha, gotcha. Now, before we wrap up, one question I like to ask every guest that comes on is, when you think about your journey and you think about the expertise and the value that you add to entrepreneurs and their business, what is 2 pieces of advice that you've kind of learned and experienced in your journey that you think would be beneficial to entrepreneurs?
I think one of them is, and I think to some degree, different entrepreneurs know this, but one, you're not alone. Like, don't. I think even as I've gone through my career, we always have those people that we work with that are the heroes, right? And heroes can only do so much. And so I've learned throughout my career, and I think even as an entrepreneur, you're not alone. Like, bring other people along. There's people that want to help, and so a little bit to your conversation that Tarek brought up around ego, right? Lose the ego, and I think we all struggle with that. But I think that is actually really great advice. Is let's just get to the best idea. And I think even from an ethical standpoint, to tie the two together, just start with the idea. Let's not label it as good, bad. Like, if we could just kind of put it in a vacuum and just analyze it from the idea perspective and not try and label it too fast, right? Then we can actually look at it and analyze it objectively. But too often we put our own labels and biases and things on ideas or businesses that, and we don't really ever give them the opportunity to say, well, is that really the right path? Is that really the right way to think about it? So, I mean, I think to kind of tie the two together, the business and the ethics point, I would say, one, you're not alone. Bring other people along in the boat with you, and then two, you know, don't label things so fast, right? Labels can be great, but they can also be really bad because we have a tendency in the fast-paced world to try and slap labels on a bunch of things, and we miss out on opportunities because of it, because we dismiss it way too early because we've categorized it as something that isn't for us.
Gotcha. Awesome. Now, where can people find or either sign up, or where do you teach? I apologize, I didn't ask
Yeah,
that question earlier.
no worries. So it's at the University of Cincinnati. So the Bearcats. I teach the class for right now. It's for it's the Lindner College of Business. So Carl Lindner is a very famous local businessman in Cincinnati. So the college is named after him. So I teach it for the Lindner Honors Plus program. So that's where I teach the class. Just finished the second semester. We'll see based upon if the students were happy with the class, whether I get to do it again, but hopeful to do it again and then potentially kind of expand it out to the broader business college beyond just kind of the honors group.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show, for telling us about, diving into the topic of ethics, because I think ethics is something that every business will have to, wrestle with throughout their entire business career, whether you're professional or whether you're an entrepreneur or business owner. And thanks for telling us more about, the firm that you're working with and even just the tax thoughts. Really appreciate having you on the show.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Talk Library. If you like what you heard and you want to hear more, be sure to click the subscribe button and follow us on all social media platforms as the Business Talk Library.